Hi there, this is Colin McGarry, Walking D-Day. I'd like to thank all those that helped the channel by sharing, giving a thumbs up, or by tapping subscribe, and especially to those that help with PayPal or Patreon. Now today we're on Gold Beach. We're talking about that incorrigible hero, Stanley Hollis, who won the only Victoria Cross on D-Day. Now, he was born in Middlesbrough and he joined the Territorial Army before the war. He was in the 4th Green Howards, and when the war started he was transferred to the 6th Green Howards, and that's the unit he was in on D-Day. He came into Gold Beach. He had a bone to pick with the Germans. Before being evacuated from Dunkirk in 1940, he'd seen civilians shot by German soldiers. The Green Howards were part of the 50th Northumberland Division and the most experienced troops in the war. Hollis has been in Tunisia and Sicily, and he was to become the only Victoria Cross winner on D-Day. The landings on Gold Beach started at 7:35, an hour later than Omaha, due to the difference in the tide. Hollis was a Company Sergeant Major, CSM, of D Company, commanded by Major Lofthouse. As Hollis's LCA approached the beach, he saw just one building, which was on the beach. We can't see it now because there's other buildings and they've built a flood bump. He'd seen this structure before leaving England. It was on the plans, and he took it to be a machine gun position. He posed a Lewis machine gun on the prow of the LCA and blasted it. Lifted the machine gun off again. He got a great blister from the red hot barrel. When they got on the beach, they found it was a waiting room for a railway line, narrow gauge, that went along here. Their first objective was the MOnt Fleury gun battery on the heights overlooking the beach. It was near the only building in the area at the time, which was a Crepon villa. So called because the driveway visible in aerial photos had the shape of a lavatory pan. Now, as usual, there's different accounts of what happened. Some say it was halfway up the road from the beach when they saw the machine guns. Some say they just crossed this road here that was being built at the time. And other accounts say they were just passing in front of the Crepon villa when they saw the machine guns. But anyway, the thing is, there were no houses here, but there were 2 machine gun positions joined by trenches. Now, Hollis ran straight towards the first one, firing his Sten gun. Even though they were firing at him, his action disconcerted them and they missed him, and he jammed his Sten gun through the opening of the machine gun position and fired in. Then he jumped up on the roof and dropped a grenade through the opening, and then went in the back door. He found 2 dead Germans, others were wounded, and others surrendered to him. Then he went along the trench to the 2nd machine gun position. They didn't even try and resist, they just surrendered. They didn't want to mess with this crazy cray. The main objective was the MOnt Fleury battery, and when they got there they found it had been abandoned due to the bombing and the shelling, so that went pretty easily. The battery gives us a good object lesson on how the Germans were building their bunkers, racing against time to get the Atlantic Wall ready for the invasion. Here they were using concrete blocks to make the shape and then filling with concrete. Now, 1 or perhaps 2 were near completion, and 1 had a gun in it, 122mm gun. The others were just being started. Now, this one was near completion, and it's now been converted into a house. Well, these 2 had just been started. There's just the outline of the breeze blocks, concrete blocks, with the gap between them, which would have been filled with concrete. And in the distance we can see the British Memorial, which was opened in 2021. Sign says de Crepon. Now the Green Howards could now move inland towards Crepon. These markings were put on the walls at Vere later to show the way to troops moving inland. Lieutenant Kilpatrick, who commanded D Company, had been killed, so Hollis took command. The village of Crepon was secured rapidly. Passing the Pavillion Farm, he went in to search it. He just found a young boy. Investigating down the alley, a bullet hit the wall above his head. He pulled back, then crawled forward through the orchard. He saw two dogs wagging a tail by a hedge. Somebody must be there. He then made out a gun. So he came back to the road to see Major Lofthouse, who said to take a Piat and a small party to take it out. Hollis took 2 Bren gunners with him, and the others hold him back to come to their assistance if needed. Hollis crawled through a rhubarb patch, which was here, to get close enough to fire the Piat. He missed, and the gun was traversing and fired at the farmhouse. Hollis shouted to the men to get out and move back to the road. Major Lofthouse said that as the guns posed no immediate threat, they would leave them to be taken out later. Then Hollis heard firing coming from the orchard. He realised the Bren gunners were pinned down. Hollis picked up a Bren gun and, firing from the hip, advanced to the orchard, yelling to the men to get out. It was for these 2 actions on D-Day that he was awarded the Victoria Cross, the only Victoria Cross of D-Day. But Hollis wasn't finished with badass actions. Now Bay was taken on the 7th and tanks approached Tilly-sur-Seul, which is just here, but without infantry support they had to pull back. Now on the 8th, the Panzerlehr was moving towards Bayeux from the south. Now Hill 103 had been taken on the 8th and the 4th, 7th Dragoon Guards moved in on the 9th. The 6th Green Howards had spent a few days at Saint-Léger near Bayeux. Now they were to come and take Hill 102, which is a minor hill that way, while the 8th Brigade would move south through Tilly-sur-Seul, which is just here. Now the Green Howards were set to take a minor hill, Hill 102, to the east of Hill 103, and this was to protect the flank of the 8th Armoured Brigade advancing. Colonel Hastings set companies C and B to lead the attack, with the tanks of 4th 7th Dragoon Guards backing them up. Now the attack went okay at the beginning, but as soon as they started to mount the rise, the attack was failing. So Hastings sent D and A to go through B and C. So Company D with Stan Hollis would be on going up this Sunken Lane. Stan Hollis realised that there was a machine gun just up there where the lane bends, with 2 Germans operating it, and it was holding up the advance. Now these Germans were operating the machine gun in the reglementary fashion, firing a short burst. They were in a pit up there, so they pop up, fire a short burst, then pop down, then pop up, fire a short burst, and then pop down again. Now this was the way to use an MG42, which they had. You might know it has a firing rate of 1,200 rounds a minute, which seems pretty impressive. But if you fire it non-stop, in 40 seconds you've emptied the belt of 800 rounds. So the way to fire it was a short burst, stop, short burst. That also stopped the barrel from getting red hot. So they were operating the machine gun like this, and Hollis thought with 2 Krauts with a machine gun aren't going to hold up a whole battalion, and he thought the next time they pop up I'm going to throw a grenade at them. So he looked in his ammunition pouch for a grenade, and there was just a pair of socks in there. So he asked his men for a grenade, they gave him one. And so the next time the men popped up to fire the machine gun, as they were popping down, Hollis launched the grenade, and they saw it coming. Now, as soon as he threw it, he realised he hadn't pulled the pin out. Now, most men would just hang on and try again next time. But Hollis, he thought, well, they don't know the pin hasn't come out. And so he ran straight after it. And he got to the ditch where the two men were. They were crouching in the bottom waiting for the grenade to go off. And he shot them both. And the advance could carry on. Now, it wasn't obvious from looking at a map, but point 102 was actually more strategic than point 103, which is over there. Because from point 102, we can see right to Caen. That's why the Germans are so intent on keeping it. Now, the attack continued, but it was still later on held up. The Germans were intent on keeping point 102. And as night was falling, they could hear noise of battle going on at Hill 103. The Germans were counterattacking that way. And the tanks with the men would have to go back to their leaguer for the night. So Colonel Hastings got permission to retreat. Hill 102 was finally taken on the 25th of June. Now, Hollis was wounded in September and repatriated to England. In October, he was awarded the Victoria Cross by King George VI. And after the war in the 50s, he became the landlord of a pub. He renamed it the Green Howard. Now, that pub was going to be demolished, so he took over another pub in 1970, but he died 2 years later in 1972. His Victoria Cross was bought by Sir Ernest Harrison, who donated it to the Green Howards Museum in 1977. In 1987, he bought this waiting room that Stan had attacked, and it's now a memorial to Hollis and the Green Howards.